The moment those doors slide closed behind Commandant Beehaz during the Aldhani heist in Andor, the whole episode changes gear, and before long it does so again with devastating results because of one single Imperial technician who cares about doing his job right. Once the Commandant steps inside, still talking smugly about how Dhani culture is basically finished, history stops listening and smashes him in the face. He's still mid-sentence, still describing a conquered people as though they are already museum material. And then Taramyn barks, "Drop it, on the floor!" That is the sound of one order replacing another, one reality replacing another. The evening the Empire thought it was hosting has just been taken away from it. The heist scene understands that power and control are related, but they're not the same thing. The Empire has the base, the uniforms, the codes, the payroll, the guns, the hierarchy. The rebels have timing, nerve, an inside man, a very small window, and a willingness to force everyone in their path into a crisis. Andor has spent the whole Aldhani arc showing us where empires are weaker than they look. They rely on people standing where they are told, hearing the right voice, the right tone of voice, assuming the system is still itself. Once that choreography gets interrupted, all the human mess underneath comes pouring out. Most of the heist is about taking Imperial systems and making them behave against Imperial interests. The uniforms, the radio, the walk, the stormtrooper, we've covered all those. Now Beehaz's body becomes a key. The guards by the vault are handled through military reflex and turned into forced labor. Even the eye itself becomes part of the operation, swallowing attention and noise under something bigger and older than the Empire can really understand. Taramyn moves like a man who knows the value of the first 3 seconds in a room because he used to belong to the machine he's now cutting to pieces. Skeen is all pressure and threat. Vel is already narrowing the world down to the only thing that matters. Cassian has a slightly different energy to the rest. He feels like he's trying to keep the temperature low and keep everything under control. His assurance that nobody has to die is one of the last traces of restraint before the heist becomes something bloodier and less controllable. Unfortunately, that is completely at the mercy of what happens next. Pettigar pulling his blaster is something of a surprise. He is still part of the Empire, still a bastard in the larger political sense, but in that instant he behaves with something close to courage. He risks his life to protect the boy, not even his boy. But Cinta enters the scene from above and puts an end to Pettigar's role in redeveloping this holy land. That is one of the things Andor keeps doing. It lets human behavior stay recognizable even when the political lines are clear. Fascists can still act bravely in the moment. From there, the heist turns into work. Hard, ugly, physical work. Heist stories often invite you to enjoy the competence of the thing, the planning, the timing, the specialists, the improvisation when it goes wrong. Aldhani gives you that too, but it makes you feel the labor, the noise, and the panic just as strongly. The payroll is heavy. The credits are locked in trays, the trolley falls and becomes irretrievable, the men loading the credits are scared, slow, exhausted. The shouting never stops, move, faster, lift, push, pull, load it, step it up. What they are stealing is a mountain of stored value, concentrated Imperial extraction made physical. It takes bodies, sweat, time and brute force to move it. When Skeen, even up against the clock, takes a moment to just drink in the sight of the credits, it's as much about the scale as the value. And while all of this is happening inside, the episode keeps cutting back outside to the Dhani and the Eye. When the Dhani leader throws the fur into the fire, it's not clear if this is part of the ceremony or an insult to the Empire's gift. The Empire loses control of meaning the second its back is turned. Beehaz can narrate the decline of a people, he can describe their rituals as nonsense, he can convert hides into leases and sacred land into development potential, but he cannot control what those things mean to the people still living inside them. He cannot flatten reality as completely as he thinks he can. And in the middle of all this sits one of the key ironies of the entire heist. The rebels for this short stretch of time start sounding like the people they hate. Skeen and Vel become managers of coerced labour. Taramyn becomes pure command voice. Bodies are moved under threat. Workers are given no choice. Fear becomes fuel. Revolution here is a group of desperate people using force, timing and fear to tear something valuable out of an imperial structure before that structure fully wakes up. The goal is just. The methods are ugly. Taramin is right at the center of that. His whole value is that he understands how Imperial obedience sounds. When he screams Commandant Inspection, muster up, it's such a brilliant move because it is a tone more than a sentence. He knows the reflex. He knows what kind of bark makes bored men stop playing cards and line up in the perfect position to be searched and subjugated. An almost Pavlovian reflex. The rebellion needs what the Empire made in him. It needs his drilled instincts, his room control, his sense of pace, his military muscle memory. Then the scene dispatches him doing the thing he is best at, moving under fire, trying to support Vel, using the body the Empire trained right up until the moment that body is taken away. If I was there, I would have shouted, "Taramin, duck!" What? Come on, that's brilliant. For what it's worth, I believe he gets hit as a direct result of Skeen's self-preservation instincts, not providing the requested cover as effectively as he could. While Taramin's end is heroic, it's framed as realistically mundane in the moment. He's not afforded a hero shot, he doesn't achieve anything with the sacrifice, and the camera cuts away quickly. We don't see his face again, so my only half-serious plan to analyse the faces of the fallen as I did with Tim isn't going to work here. Speaking of, I always want to take a moment to stop and reflect on someone we've lost. Taramin feels like someone for whom there was originally more story which got cut out of necessity. He's been one of the hardest characters to get to know. But I came to appreciate the relentless bad mood of the galaxy's grumpiest Londoner, his dedication to the cause and his skill set, regardless of its origins. The actor's name is pretty awesome. He's called Gershwin Eustache Jr. He hasn't been in anything else I've heard of and somehow doesn't even sadly have a Wikipedia page to learn more about him. Goodbye, Taramin. On the subject of goodbyes, we also lose Gorn here. He has spent the whole episode acting the part of a serving officer while already living somewhere else in his head. Here he finally cashes out every compromise he has made. Beehaz stiffens when he hears Gorn's voice behind him. He looks shocked but not surprised. I like that Gorn isn't even thinking about him. Now Gorn's the one flattening people into numbers, and his commandant is just another body to move credits until Beehaz addresses him directly and just says, "You." I love the shot where he hears Gorn entering. Beehaz is a mess, hair everywhere, sweating. The look on his face when he hears Gorn complaining about how behind the team are is the moment the robbery stops being a blur of orders and carts and guns and becomes something much worse. A betrayal by a man he knew, a vengeful husband he probably should have seen coming, and a subordinate now standing there barking at him to work faster. Up until that moment, he assumed Gorn was already taken out of the picture by the rebels, but this makes so much sense now. And Gorn's answer to a threat of hanging is one of the best lines in the episode. 7 years serving you, I deserve worse than that. He refuses easy redemption. He is not pretending that one right choice at the end cleans away his many years inside the machine. He knows what he has been part of. He knows betrayal does not erase complicity. When the device Vel and Cinta planted start scrambling the comms in the valley, the other Imperials just assume that the Eye is the cause. We know how lax the Empire is. We can be confident that in the vast majority of instances, this suspicion would end there with a shrug. But not for Kimsey, who's noticed that the Alkenzi channel still works and knows enough about the technicalities to sense something isn't adding up. Some careful safe-cracking style knob-twiddling later, he picks up on the signal of that parallel reality underneath, overhearing Cinta and Nemik freely discussing the vault with the confidence of rebels who don't believe anyone inside the Empire is as good at their job as Kimsey is. Why is the Alkenzi channel still working? My assumption is if that signal went down when it has never done so during the Eye before, forces would be immediately scrambled to the dam, and since they're only a few minutes away by air, it's best not to arouse those suspicions this early in the process. This is why Nemik points out the switch and says don't touch it. I think there's an unspoken yet because it does seem to be part of the plan that she touches it later. When Kimsey and a squad of guards he's collected enter the scene, Gorn tries to throw rank at him. In most Imperial situations that would probably work, but Kimsey needs to hear it from Beehaz. To be fair, what he's stumbled into looks insane, and believing it's a secret exercise is a stretch. Unfortunately, Beehaz, who has spent the last 15 minutes under stress and the last 7 doing intense, unexpected exercise, chooses this moment to collapse, presumably with a heart attack, the most perfect ending for a character who was undoubtedly created as the personification of Cassian's line about the Empire being fat and lazy. After Beehaz drops, Kimsey shoots Gorn in the head almost immediately. It's actually even more inauspicious than Taramin's death. It happens so quickly and cuts away so fast that most viewers would probably be thinking, Wait, did Gorn just eat it? I talked about him a bit more in a previous episode, so I won't say too much here, but I liked Gorn a lot, and hats off to actor Suli Rimi for the portrayal here. When Gorn's body hits the floor, the whole thing tips from robbery into survival. You may have heard the phrase "no plan survives contact with the enemy," commonly attributed to 19th century Prussian Field Marshal Helmuth von Moltke the Elder. Or its modern version, "everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face," attributed to 20th century American boxer Mike Tyson. That's where we are now. Until this moment, the rebels are still forcing the world to behave more or less on their terms. After the shooting starts, the heist stops belonging to the people who planned it. Men scramble, time vanishes, Taramin and Gorn are lost, Vel is pinned, Cassian is wrestling a man in the Rono. You know, I'm not sure we ever see Cassian win a physical fight in this show. He can't even beat Cyril up. The two corpos don't count, that wasn't a fight. He engineered one moment of chaos when he was out of options and just happened to come out on top. I just think it's interesting to have a male lead of an action show portrayed this way. He's a scrapper who fights with his whole heart, but generally finds himself overpowered and was probably a goner here if Nemik hadn't found a lucky shot. Cassian is fascinating through all this because the lie he's been telling about himself keeps looking flimsier. He came into Aldhani as the competent outsider, the man doing a job, the man whose relationship to ideology was strictly transactional. In this sequence, he becomes central to everybody's survival. No longer is he hovering at the edge of the cause, pretending he's just passing through it. The heist has pulled him bodily into usefulness, responsibility and risk on behalf of other people, and he seems good at it. Vel goes through her own transformation too. Earlier in the episode, she wavered on the dam edge. Here she becomes narrow and effective. You can feel the leadership cost hardening inside her. Threaten the hand, threaten the family, keep Beehaz moving, keep the workers moving, keep the timeline visible even as it slips. She is collapsing the world into a single track because choice itself has become a form of danger. Leadership here means becoming smaller, colder, less flexible and more brutal. Cinta's role here is away from the noise, guarding a room full of bound hostages. She has at least 6 guys in there that they picked up en route, plus the Beehaz family of course. Then it turns out that blowing the locks in the vault has set off an alarm at Alkenzi and they're calling. I was sure this was another hole in Gorn's plan at first, but I don't think so now. They knew those ties were coming. We have to assume for some reason that simply having Cinta say "false alarm Alkenzi, everything fine here" and giving a North code provided by Gorn wouldn't work for some reason. Nemik even warned Cinta the call was coming soon during their discussion, so none of this is a surprise. If the rebels had shut that channel down, Alkenzi would have scrambled straight away, but if they leave it open, they'd scramble when the vault is blown, giving the rebels precious extra time. In fact, I believe this is what determines their tight deadline, because the only other concrete environmental option is setting the deadline to the end of the eye, which doesn't make sense as you'd want to be up and away while it's still at its peak. In response to the call, Cinta turns off the channel and then switches off all power to the base. Switching off the power is partly to aid in the escape from the base, especially her escape, but the timing of it happening when the call comes is a direct communication to Gorn, which we see him receive. Cinta has no direct line to Gorn, but when all the power goes off, he now knows they have 9 minutes, which explains why he turns up in the vault freaking out about the deadline. Across the valley, we see one of the most beautiful shots I think we've ever seen in Star Wars, a tie hanging in its cradle, silhouetted against the eye as a tiny figure climbs down the ladder and jumps fluidly into the cockpit. A change of shot shows us 3 ties launching and howling like a storm towards the dam. We leave Cinta in that room full of living, breathing, terrified leverage. Do not worry, dear viewer, we shall return to her in the next episode to discuss what happens in there and why, and it's not what most people seem to think. And finally there is Nemik. The idealist earns his place in the action. He understands the systems, runs the radio, handles the technical side, stays brave, stays bright and switched on. The earlier anxiety is burned into adrenaline. Upon meeting him, you'd assume he doesn't have the steel for the hard stuff, but he lived the life for months and absolutely belongs in the heist. And then the heist shows him its weight. One of the youngest believers, the one most alive to the future, the one carrying the shape of a manifesto in his head, gets physically crushed by the material success of the mission. The payroll cart slams into him as the ship launches. The symbolism there is almost cruelly exact. The purest revolutionary is broken by the weight of the thing they came to steal. Money is not abstract in Andor. Empire is not abstract. It weighs something. It breaks bones. And as we see with Luthen in the last scene of this episode, even victory has mass. Everybody comes into the heist carrying a set of ideas about what matters. The Empire believes in systems, hierarchy, habit, procedure, the comfort of being obeyed. The rebels believe in timing, planning, nerve, discipline, the possibility of a blow strong enough to matter. The Dhani carry ritual, memory, the eye, the older meaning of the land. And then the operation begins, and all of those things are dragged through bodies, through doors, through trolleys, rooms, gunfire and panic, through one man paying attention when he should have stayed passive, through another man's heart failing, through an escape that works and still maims the people inside it. That is why this scene is much richer than a normal action climax. It gives you the excitement, certainly, the breach, the bluff, the loading, the close calls, the launch, but underneath that it is asking a harder question: what does rebellion actually feel like once it stops being an idea and becomes physical reality? The answer Aldhani gives is loud, heavy, frightened, ugly, improvised, exhausting and morally rough. People do brave things, people do cruel things, people do practical things, people do stupid things. People let you down. Plans hold for a while and then reality starts making its own decisions. By the time the Rono punches out into that impossibly beautiful night sky, the episode has shown that the fat, lazy Empire's old certainties are history. A parallel reality came to life in their space, changing the course of their future history in the process. The scene proves the ritual still lives, the plan can work, the Empire can be hit, the galaxy will know that now, and all of it is uglier, heavier and more costly than anyone wanted to admit. The heist strips away any fantasy that a successful blow against power will look neat from the inside. The rebels win here because they survive the chaos slightly better than the system they have just wounded. That is the right kind of victory for Andor, hard won, half broken, airborne by inches, and already being crushed by the weight of its own success.